Yo, peace to the gods, peace to the earth. The earth, peace to the earth. This your man, the King of Truth. King Truth is Allah. Coming on this understanding day of April. It's 22. Now, please keep in mind the way I teach. I rearrange supreme mathematics, in my opinion, how I see it, to make it more right and exact. So I would just rearrange. 2 is now understanding, 3 is now wisdom. Or wisdom. And so I see understanding equals culture freedom. Understanding, right? So that means that you have to, pardon my nose hairs, I gotta clip them, but they say that's a breach of etiquette to have nose hairs and ear hairs. They say it's a breach of etiquette, so I try to be proper, you understand? But understanding 22. Understanding equals culture freedom, right? So you have to they say educators say to show and prove that you understand something, you have to put it in your own words, right? So you must have vast level of vocabulary, right? You must be familiar with definitions, synonyms, and things of that nature, right? So you have to understand, really know what understand means in order to teach and live understanding. You see, I pay attention to a lot of gods and earths and people in general that build, that talk, and they speed over understanding. They knowledge, wisdom, understanding. No, it's knowledge, understanding, wisdom. If you understood wisdom and knowledge, and you would understand why I changed it. You understand? But yeah, man, so you got to really know what something means. And so the definition of understanding is to have a clear mental picture. So your mind has to be working right, and it has to have already processed knowledge, right knowledge, or knowledge, to determine if it's right knowledge. You see what I'm saying? So understanding plus understanding equals culture freedom, right? Yeah. And culture freedom is you must understand somebody's understanding of how they choose to live their life, right? And so our definition of culture freedom is to be able to live out your culture, your life, without conflict. That's culture without conflict. Your life is culture without conflict is freedom. So in order to live that and let other people live that, you got to understand what they are doing, and then understand, how to peacefully go about respecting somebody's culture freedom. See what I'm saying? So peace. So understanding. You got to understand what understanding means. You got to understand how you get the wisdom. You get the wisdom by learning some knowledge and applying the knowledge. The only way you apply the knowledge properly to get the wisdom to be wise is to understand. Now, the word understanding, I looked it up. I tried to research the word understanding, and I didn't come up with anything that made sense based on the breakdown of the word. Understand, to stand under something, and then you get it, to stand under something, or under something you stand, right? Under something, understand, to stand under, to stand under something. Then you acknowledge you received information and can go and process it and know what it's saying, to stand. So yeah, the phone rang, knocked the video off. But I don't understand, based on the breakdown of the English language, under and stand, that how that means to completely have a clear mental picture of what someone is saying. I'm still confused about the English language understand. But this how they, our English language is like, comes from European, over in Europe and England and Britain. So this is different than African countries' language, right? So this is what they mean by the English lesson. You understand? So, but yeah, man. So you got to understand that. And I thank Father. They said Father Allah, looked up all these things. He was looking up, why is water wet? What makes the sky blue? See what I'm saying? So, he was into that, and, just to have a better understanding of what was going on in the world around him. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, so as we are born from our parents, born from our mother, and we are sent to school, and we listen to our parents and family talk, we understand. But the word understand, like in Spanish, understand mean comprende, which means to comprehend. So, maybe, but comprehend and understand sound two different things, but they have the same meaning. See what I'm saying? So even you see what I'm saying is I'm asking, do you understand? Right? How do you see that? I'm asking you, can you, how do you see that? You know what I mean? So that's how I see today's math. You got to understand what it means to understand. You understand? Peace. Right? So now I'm going to talk about Jesus. Jesus Christ. Real quick. I'm going to be quick. I got a video here talking about how I was going to kill Jesus. And so that means, like, I feel it's just my responsibility to inform people of my findings, of my research about Jesus, and form an opinion about Jesus based on the research I did, right? And so I first researched Jesus a while back, and it said Jesus, the story of Jesus being the miracle birth of God, the creator of the world, planet Earth, is a ripoff, is a copycat of some other people that was trying to start their own religion. And the story went, it was a couple, and the man died, and after the man died, his wife started, they had intercourse and made a baby, but she wasn't, she didn't start showing till after the husband died, right? And everybody asked her, who was your baby father? And she said, God. And so I don't know what happened there. But she said God, right? And so then you get to Mary and Joseph, and the story they tell, that God, the creator of the planet Earth, reached down and touched Mary's belly, and then she got pregnant. So yeah, man. So Mary and Joseph come in, and they said God touched Mary's belly, and what they call it, immaculate conception, whatever that means, right? But to me, that's kind of fraudulent, because Mary was married to Joseph, and I'm gonna assume they had other children. And I don't think she was a virgin. I don't think Jesus was the oldest son of them. I don't think she was a virgin, because she had to, what they call it, consummate their marriage. In biblical times, that was a wife's responsibility to consummate her marriage through sexual intercourse with her husband. So, why would, in the Old Testament with Moses, they tell you thou shalt not commit adultery, but in the New Testament, I guess it's the New Testament, the birth of Jesus, God chose a married woman. See what I'm saying? So that don't make no sense for God to choose a married woman and, who was not a virgin. If she married to Joseph, how she a virgin? So now what? So now if I got the story wrong, she had Jesus first and then met Joseph and married him. Is that how the story go? I don't think the story went that way. So then my research said the story of Jesus, the birth of Jesus, the story of Jesus is the bridge from and for the Old Testament to the New Testament. Well, if the mission was to create a new religion, then through some story of a miracle child, then that was achieved. Because if the New Testament take you into Jesus Christ, and then people say, well, Christianity comes after the death of Jesus. Well, that's the new religion, Christianity. They did call him Jesus Christ, and Christ the Redeemer. So the breakdown of the word Christianity, Christ is in Christianity. Bug or something on here. Christ, if you break down the word Christianity, it's Christ. See what I'm saying? So, that was achieved. Now, they say the reason for Christ was Christ believed, and Christians believe, or followers of Christ believe, that God, his so-called Father, made it too hard to get into heaven. So the reason for Christ was just to believe in him, and through him you can meet his Father and get to heaven, right? And so now all the miracles that say Jesus performed was bull. See what I'm saying? So yeah, man, that's so, man, Christ, the story of Christ is bull. And so then I did the research, like they say, so it is above, so it is below. Or so it is below, so it is above. And then you got, the probability that something is true, and versus the possibility of something is true. And so, the only way living beings procreate is through male-female intercourse, and from the female species can a child be born, not through so-called immaculate conception. Immaculate conception. I didn't look up the word, but you get the idea. You can understand. You see what I'm saying? So, man, unless Mary was cheating, and if they say, well, Joseph couldn't have no kids, then she didn't stray. You see what I'm saying? And you're not supposed to commit adultery based on the 10 Commandments given from God's mouth to Moses' ear to Moses' tablets. You see what I'm saying? So now we got the old school scroll tablets, and we got the new school computer tablets. You understand, right? So I will no longer be participating in any, or acknowledging, or recognizing any Christian rituals. But I give people the space and freedom to do that. It's just, I understand that, this what level they on. This how they've been taught. You understand? But it's wrong. And so as a 5%er, I have to try to, if I'm able, if I can, and I'm asked or invited to explain, then that's peace. But if I'm not, I can only, do my duty where I can. That's through social media and or spaces where it's peace. You understand? So, that's all I'm saying. I'm out. Peace.